sums up how I feel about most things. Anyway, go ahead.
We are now recording. Welcome everyone to Shh, I'm Listening, the second edition. My name is Greg Newton. My partner's name is
Donnie Jokum.
We're the co-founders of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division in New York City, founded in 2012, living at the LGBT Community Center since 2014, and closed since March 13th, 2020. But we've been doing lovely online events like this, and we have an online store, which is super exciting, and we now have like 280 books on there. So we hope you'll check it out, bgsqd.com/store. And also, we have a YouTube channel. So we've been posting recordings of our events on the YouTube channel, also BGSQD. So yeah, if you've missed something and you wanted to check it out, that's where you can go and see the goodness. And we'll also post this one as well. So with that, we are happy to present our friends of the New York Queer Zine Fair, Paul Moreno, yay, and Kel Karpinski. Please take it away, Kel Karpinski.
Excellent.
Put your hands together, people.
Well, thank you to the Bureau, to Greg and Donnie for hosting us again in this lovely event. Paul and I are very excited. We're sporting our lovely New York Queer Zine Fair 2020 t-shirts.
Hey, Vincent.
Which you can also get your own if you so desire such a thing. You know, as many of you know, the New York Cuisine Fair this year was forced to be entirely online. So we created an online directory on our website at nyqzf.com. And the directory features a lot of really great zinesters, and sort of the advantage to us being totally virtual is that a lot of folks who are not in the city got to participate this year. So there's some, you know, if you've been to a past zine fair, there's some new and interesting folks on there, as well as, you know, all of our favorites, of course. That is definitely up. We also have been curating a list of zinesters of color to help, you know, illuminate their work and elevate their voices. And so that is also on our website. I'm going to put this stuff in the chat. So our main site and directory is at nyqzf.com, and then the zinesters of color list is at the letter. There's too many letters. nyqzf.com/ZOC. And if you yourself are a zinester of color or know a queer zinester of color who should be added to our list, feel free to reach out to us or email us. We're always expanding that list. And if you want to support the Zine Fair and get one of these awesome t-shirts that we are sporting, it is up at bonfire.com/nyqzf 2020. There's also a link to it on our main website. So we are very happy to present. This is the second edition of I'm Listening. We had another one back in April? Does anyone remember April? And so we're very excited today to present our three readers. We have J.B. Brager, Tyler Hampton, and Martin Marafiorte as Anthony Malone. JB will be starting us off. I'm going to read their bio. J.B. Brager is a cartoonist and teacher living on occupied Lenape land. They are founding editor of Pinko magazine and teach history and gender studies at Rutgers University. Their comics and work on comics appears in the Nib, World War III Illustrated, the Jewish Comics Anthology, the Black Warrior Review, Shareable Magazine, the LA Review of Books, Guts Magazine, and Apiary Magazine. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to JB.
Thank you, Cal. Cool. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work functionally. So can everyone see my little doodad here. Yeah, there's like this weird thing where you can't actually like share a PowerPoint while you're reading it. I don't know. It's like a whole thing. Whatever. Anyway, so so thanks everybody. As Cal mentioned, I'm a cartoonist. I do a bunch of different stuff, but I decided today to sort of focus on my my comics about history because I'm currently teaching a class at Rutgers called Graphic History that I'm still very excited about, where all of the students are drawing comics about them. And so I wanted to show you a couple of comics that I've done recently. One was for the International Horse Day zine. International Horse Day is June 2nd, I think, every year. And it is on that day to commemorate this occupation that happened in Lyon, France in 1975. So the comic opens with some of the, and they self-identified as revolting whores, occupying the church, and they wrote this song that they sang, which I don't know what the tune was, but the lyrics were, "When we occupy the church, you are scandalized, religious bigots. You have threatened us with hell. We have come to eat at your table at Saint Nazaire," which is the name of the church, which I thought was really baller. So, oh, I think that's cut off for me, but probably not for you. So a lot of the source material that I used was newspaper articles from 1975. And so a lot of what, a lot of like the speech bubbles in the comic are direct quotes from participants in the occupation. And so one of the participants told a newspaper, "This church is the only place where the police cannot touch us. We are victims of a gross injustice." So prostitution was actually legal in France, but it was illegal to solicit clients or to live off the earnings of prostitutes. So you could, I guess, so basically sex workers were criminalized, but clients were more decriminalized in that place and time. So the families of sex workers were criminalized. Often partners of sex workers were accused of being pimps. Police abuse sex workers and frequently failed to investigate violence against them. And so in the comic, I just had a member of the gendarmerie saying, "Madame, you are under arrest for solicitation." And then the sex worker is saying, "Fuck you." So one of the newspapers that reported on the occupation was the New York Times. And this was actually my favorite part of any of the articles, where they noted that they lived on oranges, pate, and cakes. And in their ample spare time, they've been watching movies. And the crowd favorite was the 1952 Western High Noon. So it seemed like a very decadent protest, which I really loved. So the occupiers were supported by labor organizations, women's movement groups, homosexual militants, and even a group of Parisian priests. Simone de Beauvoir said, "I hope they are successful, and I am ready with my friends in the women's liberation movement to support this movement." Far cry from the swerfs of today. So unfortunately, the strike ended by force, but the struggle continues. Every year, the occupation is commemorated with protests and actions for the liberation of sex workers around the world. And so this is an illustration that is kind of taken from a protest from a couple years ago in New York. So, yeah, so that's that comic. And the next piece that I wanted to share was published in Jewish Currents. And I'm presenting it here out of order from the way that it was originally published, because I'm now in the process of turning this comic into a book length project. And so it's sort of really shifting the way that I like look at the material. So the project, both the comic and the book, is called Heavyweight. And so the actually, I'm going to do this out of order. I'm going to show you like the book proposal before I show you the comic. So the title of the book is Heavyweight. And the reason that I picked that for the title, and this is the comic that I'm going to show you, is that my great grandfather, Eric Levy, was a boxing champion in Germany in the 1920s. And I also decided to title it that because of the heavy weight of intergenerational trauma. Get it? And so, as I'll show you in the comic, Eric Levy, he was a Jewish boxer. I am also, he was an amateur Jewish boxer, and I am also an amateur Jewish boxer. And so, so that's a kind of important connection for me. So I'm piecing together the details. This is from the longer comic, but basically just like I'm doing all this research, and you know, every time I find something, I find 10 more things. And I'm also asking a lot of historical questions that end up also being personal questions, like how class privilege impacted Jewish experiences. The book is about how family memory and storytelling shape us as people, our politics, our imaginations, and our desires. And also, like, what do we do with traumatic memory? So the piece reorganized that was in Jewish Currents goes like this. Have I told you that my Opa was a boxer? And Opa is just German for grandfather. I have his red knuckles and a red face sometimes. Jab, cross, jab. And this is my friend Elle, who's my sparring partner. Elle always tells me that my boxing face is really scary and I look like I'm going to kill someone when I box. And I am a very laid back person, so it's very kind of startling to hear that. But apparently I have a scary boxing face. Can you inherit anger? Can a temper be genetic? Oh, I'm very laid back, but I'm not actually. I receive these things from him, I imagine. My big mouth and my bad attitude, even though I never met him and I don't think we would agree on much. Don't forget to breathe. It's my #1 piece of boxing and life advice. My Oma tells the story, recorded first by my aunt in 1988, and then in 1996 by the Shoah Foundation. My Opa, Eric, and his brother, Kurt, were boxers and Jews. That's my great-grandmother, Ilsa Levy. Her maiden name was Khan, and then my grandfather, Eric. He grew up, I would say, more or less, this is my great-grandmother, Jane. He grew up, I would say, more or less what you would call here as a playboy. He never really had to work. He could devote his time to sports. It was the 1920s. In those days, there were meetings where they would talk against the Jews and try to get them out of Germany and buy them tickets at that time to Palestine and so on. Eric and his brother Kurt would excuse or let anything go, except if someone would say dirty Jew or dirty anything. At one of those meetings in some kind of big beer hall, they started a street fight. They emptied the whole hall. Eric, she continues, was known for being anti-Hitler, and he had many fights with the leading people in the Hitler organization. The reason why Eric had to get out of Germany so fast, because he had a fight, which did go to court, with a man who became very known in the Nazi organization, which he did win, and he would have stayed, and would he have stayed, they would have killed him the next day. And so my great-grandmother always insisted that the man that he got into a fight with was Joseph Goebbels, which I don't know how that would have logistically worked, and I have like no evidence for this. So this is like the great mystery that I like, one of the mysteries that I would like to solve. Yeah. Was my Oma's story true? I couldn't find anything to confirm. Eric's boxing career is memorialized in a scrapbook full of yellowing fight cards and clippings. Eric died in 1955 of kidney failure. He was only a figure in my Oma's stories to me. Sometimes I think we would have really gotten along. Me being angry about everything. My mother says, you know, Eric wasn't a Zionist either. Oh, really? He thought Zionists were low-class leftist rabble. We are not the same. I am not a boxer, not really. Who are you? Who are you to me? But when I get angry, I think of you, Opa, the ghost of your genes in my body, your memory, your closed fists, your breath, and your body. And that's a photo my sparring partner took of me, and that's my great grandfather Eric, just kind of looking similar. So yeah. So yeah, that's it. And you can find me at JB Brager on all the social media, and also my Patreon and my website. It's all just my name, which is JB Brager. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that, JB. That was incredible.
Yeah, beautiful.
I also, before I forget, I just want to mention all of our zinesters today are on the directory, on our directory on the New York Queer Zine Fair site also. That's one more place that you can find everyone. All right, next up is Tyler Hampton. Tyler Hampton is a multidisciplinary artist and designer from Baltimore, Maryland. His work explores the intersections of intimacy, sex, queerness, and nature. When not creating zines or collages, he can be found watering his plants, all of which were named Deborah. Which I have a question about that. Are they collectively named Deborah, or is each one named Deborah?
Good question, but I'm going to go with individually named Deborah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, I got two Deborahs here to the side of me. But
That was going to be my question, was, are any of them joining us today?
I thought of bringing one in, but then I had to make coffee.
I have a quick question too.
Sure.
Do all our readers have a connection to Baltimore?
I do. I'm in Baltimore right now, and I'm from Baltimore.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
I'm from Baltimore too, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
small
You're
world.
from
Baltimore
Baltimore?
edition.
Yeah,
Again, a water hun.
yeah, that's right, hon. Yeah.
Yeah, we thought that was the case, and we thought about maybe naming it something like creatively related to
Baltimore, right?
Baltimore, and then we were like, I don't know.
As long as it's not
Yeah.
Good Morning Baltimore,
Yeah.
we're good.
It may have been pitched at some point. I won't say who. But anyway, Tyler, please go
All
ahead.
right. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. Okay. Yes, that's the one. Okay. Thank you, Paul and Kel, for having me. This is really exciting. I am a zine nerd. I stumbled upon the New York Queer Zine Fair in 2018 when it was at the center. And when I mean stumbled upon, I literally was in the village and with a friend, and we were walking by and saw a bunch of people inside. We went in, and I ended up spending a couple hours there, and I spent maybe $200 and left with a big bag full of goodies. But I just wanted to say, one of the things that I really love about zines and zine making is that, to me, it's a really pure form of expression. There's not really that many hoops you have to jump through to like write what you want to write, draw what you want to draw, or something like that. You can really, it's self-publishing, you know, you can put what you want to in a book and put it out there. And if people don't like it, well, fuck them, you know, keep doing your own thing. And as an artist, for me, it's been really a good vehicle for me to express myself. So that's my spiel. Let me get into notes. This is not the first slide, but you know what? We will just go back, and I can't go back. So we're gonna start here. There we go. Okay. All right. So notes started as an idea I had coming home on the subway once when I was really drunk, and I wrote something down in my notes app. And rather than just go into this, I'm just going to read you the preface from the zine, which is available on my website, which I will drop in the comments section shortly. Does anyone remember Post Secret? If you do, excellent. This project is 100% inspired by that. Post Secret was a project started in the mid-2000s that involved people across the world mailing in postcards upon which they wrote, illustrated, collaged secrets. These would range from light secrets like, I masturbated on your couch, to more serious ones like, I fucked your husband and he had a heart attack when he came, so I buried his body in your backyard. That's a stretch, but you get the picture. Eventually, the folks who received all these postcards would compile them and publish them in books made widely available. My high school self, wrought with overdramatic existential crises, found solace in the freedom of these secrets. I remember submitting one myself after I came out of the closet. which did not get published. Now we're in 2020, and the Carrie Bradshaw in me has to wonder, does anyone actually write postcards anymore? I think all the time about how most people probably haven't touched a pen or pencil in months, except if they're signing the restaurant bill or mailing their rent check. We type everything now. Novels of text to friends, comments on posts, flirtatious nothings on dating apps. Although we are connecting over a multitude of platforms, what we type is still an expression of who we are, what we're feeling at that moment, and how we're reacting to something. As I started to realize how much I'd used my thumbs, I also realized how much I'd used the Notes app on my phone. I'd fill it with grocery lists, to-do lists, book recommendations, dreams, reactions after seeing a piece of theater, or random thoughts that would pop up during a night out. I started to think of my notes as a journal and wondered if other people did the same. With the influx of social media into our relationships and communications these days, I worry a lot about how that affects our brains. Worthless hours spent scrolling Instagram for what? Ingesting ads, seeing aspirational bodies, things you need to stream, things you need to buy. It's like everything is being forced down our throats right now, constantly. On average, my Instagram throws in a sponsored post after scrolling every 4 posts, and a sponsored story after every 2. I'm worried that they're trying to drown out our brains to becoming unthinking, capitalist zombies who only care about how prominent our abs are, how many clothes are in our closet, or what fucking model iPhone we have. How do we hang on to ourselves when there's an unbelievable pressure from our society to become someone else, someone they deem better or more productive? I've kept a written journal since I was 14 years old, and I can say that it is the single best tool in my life for hanging on to my sanity. It's immensely difficult to write every night, but to be fair, significant events of note don't happen to us every day. But at least I can remember my voice and my thoughts. I started asking for screenshot submissions of people's notes a few months back, and they flooded in. Thanks to everyone who sent in screenshots of poems, lists, thoughts, breakup texts, rants, dreams, etc. This is a compilation of those submissions as well as some of my own. I printed it in black and white to unify all the notes because it's mostly text and color printing is expensive. I hope this project moves you or maybe triggers something within you to write down your thoughts. Remember what you go through, write it down, let it out. We only get one brain, treat it well, or don't, I'm not your mom. All right, so I'm going to read some notes now. All right. Ghosts get to watch real life porn anytime they want. If someone murders me, they better pair me with a nice Chianti. I am ambitious in that I don't want to, nor have I ever wanted to, limit myself and my interests. This is a poem. The dung beetle rolls shit through the grass for several hours, just so they can feed the children. The dung beetle grows up eating shit their parents feed them, until they can roll their own. The dung beetle thinks that actual shit is the meaning, that this endless cycle is all they are worth. The dung beetle works to feed the children. The children grow and are grateful they can now pick their own shit, only to learn that this good shit is shit they will never get to eat. Yet they persist. Relaxing into your differences and being okay with that. I'm not unhappy, but I'm not satisfied. If you jizz on someone, it's your responsibility to clean them up. This is a small, zero-chill industry. If I do take this job, I'm going to be forced to burn some bridges. I'm only saying this because I've bought cheese from there twice and it tastes like detergent. It can't be someone we know because they're wearing penny loafers. Love builds like a pop song. So yeah, that's notes. I love doing this project. As you can see, it's not a visually exciting zine per se, but it's the thoughts behind it. And for me, as the person collating everything, it's really fun for me to see what people are writing down, what they're going through, and what they're deciding to share. I would love to do a second volume of it too. So if anyone watching this has notes they want to share, please send them to me so I can do more. All right, zine number 2 is the Rescue Party zine here. And Rescue Party was a project put on by Desert Island Comics, which is a bookstore in Williamsburg. If you've never been, highly recommend. They've got great selection. Gabe, who works there, is very nice. And Rescue Party was a project that they sponsored on Instagram that with the prompt was a series of comics dreaming of a utopian post-virus future. And basically they would post people's artist submissions for that, to their reaction to that prompt. And so I am an artist by trade, but in the past couple of years, I've really leaned into collage as an art form. And so I decided, I want to say this was back in maybe April, when everything was like, really shut down, and I was in my apartment just all day washing my groceries and stuff. And this prompt really inspired me to create artwork, which I hadn't done in months. So I pulled out a bunch of magazines and started going for it. And I'll read the quick little preface, and then I will go through the collages. This project began as an exercise to see if I could still make art in the midst of the COVID-19 quarantine, alone and unemployed in my apartment. After the 9 pieces were complete, my living room had shreds of magazine on the floor for days, sticking to my feet whenever I felt the urge to pace nervously or water my plants too much. Deborah. Words came first, meditating on what I was doing to keep myself sane, then writing it out as directly as possible. I reflected on the sheer amount of things lost, but also the silver linings gained. I got really fucking good at making cocktails, and my shower singing has never sounded better. But I would give anything to hug my friends at a house party or lose myself in a sweaty crowd vibrating to a thumping beat in a midnight ruin. Although I've been selling these as individual prints, they were made as a series for Rescue Party, which is a social media project I just talked about, so I'm gonna skip that. And everyone should check out that Instagram account. They have some really incredible pieces on there and some amazing artists to follow. I hope this series resonates with you and your experience thus far this year. We're heading towards another lockdown, which is good because clearly we didn't do it right the first time. I wrote this like a month ago, and it's even worse. Wear a fucking mask. Anyway, all right. Collage number 1, some days are harder than others. I pretend my apartment is a palace. When it rains, I open the windows wide. I improve my relationship with myself. I drink Negronis. I cook extravagantly. I miss the smell of sweat. I miss dark rooms full of strangers. But most days I feel just fine. All right, those are my 2 zines. I have a bunch of new stuff coming next year. I'm not going to talk about the ideas because I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, thank you very, very much for having me and allowing me to talk. It's been a dream. The past couple months have been awesome. Zine-wise, not world-wise. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tyler. Thanks for sharing. That was great. JB wanted to know, which I also want to know, and maybe other people do, if we have notes that we want to send you for your next edition, where would we send those?
You can send them to me on Instagram, which I will put Instagram, email, or my website. I will drop all of those in the comments right now. Cool. Good question, thank you.
And they're also all on the New York Queer Zine Fair directory.
They sure are.
Yeah. A reminder of that too, but more places to have things. Our brains are like sieves these days, so it definitely helps. So last but certainly not least, we have, we talked about this yesterday. I'm like, do I say your real name? Do I not? I said it earlier, but we'll say, I'm not going to. I'm going to let you explain. Anthony Malone, after reading about the mysterious disappearance of the protagonist of Andrew Holleran's Dancer from the Dance, Malone became fascinated with this tragic 1977 fire at the Everard Baths. Through a series of zines titled For Everard, Malone chronicles the Everard fire, combining archival research with imagined narratives to refocus attention to obscured histories. The series explores the media coverage of the subsequent investigation of the fire and the lives of the 9 men who perished. The zines bring together photographic images with primary news sources, as well as personal anecdotes collected from eyewitness testimonials. Malone published the zines from 2013 to 2019. Take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Greg and Donnie, thank you for hosting, and Kel and Paul, thank you so much for organizing. Let me share my screen. I've prepared some images. Tell me, does everybody see my? Okay, great. All right. Okay, we can start here. Perfect. So my name is Martin Marafiotti, but I've chosen to use a different name for this project in particular. The name that I chose is Anthony Malone. And for those of you who may have read Andrew Holleran's Dancer from the Dance, you know that the main character, the very doomed Malone, disappears at the end of the novel. And there are a couple of different hypotheses that are presented as to where he may have gone or what might have happened to Malone. Some people say that maybe he drowned. Some people say that he left New York, which in the late 70s for a gay man is the equivalent of drowning, I think. And lastly, one of the ideas put forward in the book was that he was seen at the Everard Baths on the night before the fire. And so I read this book sometime, I can't remember exactly when, sometime in the early 2000s, so a long time after it was written. The book was published in 77 or 78, right after the fire at the Everard Baths. And I'd heard of the Everard Baths before, but I sort of became fascinated with this fire, this tragedy at this bathhouse. And I started doing some research about it. And a lot of you may have heard of the Everard Baths. As far as gay bathhouses go, it's pretty well known. Sometimes it's not as famous maybe as the Continental Baths, which was sort of the Studio 54 of bathhouses. And the Continental was where all the A-list celebrities would go, as many of you may know. Bette Midler and Barry Manilow performed there, whereas the Everard was where people just went to meet up, to hook up, to have sex. It was a lot dirtier, a lot raunchier, and it was also around a lot longer. The Everard opened as a bathhouse in the late 1800s, and it closed in 1986. So it was around for almost 100 years. A lot longer than the Continental. Lots of famous people went through the Everard Baths, but I decided to focus a little bit on this. Focus quite a bit on this tragedy that happened in 1977, and I wanted to learn as much about it as possible. So I just did what everybody does now, in our day and age. I just Googled Everard Baths, and I found all sorts of information, but it seemed a little bit superficial to me. I felt like I kept finding the same information over and over again. And then I got lucky. I sort of hit the jackpot by going to eBay, and I found somebody's eBay auction where they were selling all these news clippings from 1977. This is somebody who had saved the papers since the late 70s and had held on to them and clipped them, and he had even written some marginal notes. And so I won the auction. Surprise, surprise. I don't think there's anyone else bidding on these old newspaper clippings, but I got this sort of primary source delivered to my home, and then I thought I have to do something with this. So my first thought was, let me make a zine, just sort of compiling some of this stuff. So the very first issue of For Everard that I published was in 2013, and it was basically a compilation of the media coverage from the Everard Baths fire, from the tragedy. And this is just one image from the newspaper, I believe. Let's see, it even says the guy's writing here, New York Post, May 77. So I sort of put that in the background because there were a lot of pictures of the bathhouse burning. And, when I read about the people who died in the fire, I knew that there were 9 men who died in the fire. And I started looking for, again, thinking everything's on the internet, right? So I started looking for images and information information about the 9 men who died in the fire, and I couldn't find anything. The only thing I could find as far as images go was this image here. This is a pretty well-known DJ. He's probably the most well-known of the 9 men who died in the fire. His name was Jimmy Stewart, and so for that reason, there was just more attention was paid to Jimmy Stewart. There's a little bit more published about him in the papers. But when I couldn't find images for anyone else, I just decided to sort of collage other images from publications that I had from the late 70s. I tried to stick to 77 and just sort of imagine what these people might have looked like, since I didn't really have an image of them. I tried to create an image of them in my mind. This article in particular, interestingly, is about anonymity at the baths, and again, which sort of goes back to the reason I decided to make these zines using a nom de guerre. That again, many people at the time of the fire, when they arrived at the Everard baths, it was one of the rules was that you had to sign a ledger. You had to sign your name to get into the Everard, but many people used pseudonyms, and so when they were trying to identify the 9 people who died, it was actually quite difficult. They had to sort of put all the different pieces of the puzzle together to find the people who died in the fire. And as a matter of fact, even the New York Times made a mistake and published the name of one of the guys who identified one of the bodies. So somebody's name was published in the New York Times as having died in the fire, and then he had to write in right away saying, no, I didn't die, I'm still alive. It was my friend who died in the fire. So this image I found to be really striking. This is from the New York Times. This is from May 25th, 1977. It's a little pixelated, but I sort of like it that way too. And you just see all this chaos and confusion in the background, people running all over the place, just trying to get help. And then the center of the image is just so loving and peaceful in some ways. I mean, you have this firefighter, or he looks more like an emergency, maybe an EMT worker who's just trying to pull someone away from the crowd, somebody who's obviously gasping for air. So I found that very moving. So I made that a very prominent image in the zine. I actually sort of made that the center fold of the zine, and then I've also used that image in other works, prints and things that I've made as well. By the way, I'm going to just back up one moment and just tell you that I made 11 zines about this. And when I first started doing my research on the Everard baths, I didn't plan to make 11 zines. I just wanted to make a general zine about the Everard fire. But the more research I did, the more I was interested in learning more about the people who died, and about just the circumstances right in the aftermath of the fire. And one thing that I found super interesting was blood drives that were organized specifically for people who had survived, people who were injured in the fire. I found this really interesting because it was really one of the first times that the gay community came together for something like this. And remember, this is pre-HIV/AIDS, so this is 1977, and there were specific blood drives that were organized for the people who were in the Everard Baths fire. So I decided to make a zine 2 specifically about blood work, and I called it Blood Brothers because it was about this call to come together as a community. The text that you see here is text that I transcribed from a video. Again, I tried to get creative in finding different ways to get information about this. I found a couple of articles that talked about the blood drives as well, but there was a TV show on public access in New York City in the late 70s called The Emerald City. And at the very end of the TV show, they mentioned the fire at the Everard Baths. And just as the credits are rolling, they mention this open appeal for the victims of the Everard fire. giving phone numbers and names of people to contact. So I thought that was interesting and something that really might get lost if somebody doesn't sort of jot it down. So I did. I was a little disappointed. I misspelled somebody's name, Jerry Benacento, afterwards. But it's misspelled in my zine, so more misinformation there. I wish I could correct it now, but that's that. And lastly, the last thing I wanted to mention about this particular zine, the second one of my series, is that one thing that I was thinking about was obviously the parallels between the blood drives and our FDA policy on blood donations for men who have sex with men. This is before they loosened things a little bit. Now men who have sex with men are allowed to donate blood as long as they haven't had sex with men for a year. I believe that's the latest. But at the time that I was doing this research, they were not at all. And interestingly, I thought that, you know, the policy stated that men who have had sex with men at any time since 1977, which was also the year of the Everard fire, were not allowed to donate blood because of, you know, they were considered to be at an increased risk for HIV. So that's the second of the series. I'm not gonna talk about all of them because I know we don't have enough time for that, and I don't want to bore you all. But I wanted to talk about a couple more, and then I want to finish my presentation with just a really brief reading from one of the zines. The very first zine that I made about one of the fire victims was about Jimmy Stewart. So like I said before, I made 11 zines. So there's the general zine about the media coverage, the zine about the blood drives, and then what each zine that comes after that in the series is dedicated to one person who lost their lives in the fire. And the reason I started with Jimmy Stewart, I have to be really honest with you, is because he was the easiest one, or at least I thought he was the easiest one to do the research on, because I found stuff online about him, so that made it kind of easy. You know, this is you know, a memorial tribute that had, was published in, I think it was in Billboard magazine actually, by Tom Moulton, who was also a well-known DJ, and I was able to find pictures of him online too, and get a little information about him relatively easily. This sort of took me in a different direction as well. For anybody who does archival research on people who are no longer with us, you know that there's a site, now I'm trying to think what it's called. It's like memorials.org or something, where you can actually do research on where people are buried. So I was able to find his information on his cemetery plot. He's buried in Oklahoma, so I didn't visit his gravesite. I visited some of the others, but I thought that might be a little interesting, so I threw that in there as well. This is something that I added to the zine. This is not specifically about Jimmy Stewart, but I thought that it kind of captured the moment. This is from Publications. It's from Mandate, actually, from Mandate magazine, published in 1977, about dreams and fantasies in sex clubs, and I thought this was very touching as well. It was, I mean, Mandate magazine is an erotic magazine, so it's not where you would typically find moving commemorative poetry, but there is a poem here that's called A Night at the Vapors, and it's, if you look at the small print, you'll see that it's dedicated to the victims of the Everard in May 1977. Next, so that was the easy work for me. I was like, okay, these are Jimmy Stewart I found information for online. Ken Hill was a little harder to get information on. For one thing, there's another Ken Hill who is actually more well known than my Ken Hill, than the Everard Ken Hill, and he spells his name with just one N. He was a film producer, director. He died in the 80s. He died of AIDS. And so when I was doing research and I was plugging in even Kenneth Hill into different search engines, I would get information about this other Kenneth Hill. And it wasn't until I was directed to his connection to the La Mama experimental theater here in New York City that I was able to get more information about Ken Hill. I made an appointment to talk to the special collections archivist, and I was very fortunate that you know, as soon as I got there, the archivist said that he knew Ken Hill personally, and he was very willing to share information about Ken, and even showed me some of Ken's personal photographs, shared some stories, and it was very helpful. He also put me in touch with one of Ken's dear friends, and I was able to connect with Ken's friend. And Ken's friend told me a lot of interesting anecdotes, including that Ken used to be a bartender, and this was his favorite drink, which is called an angel's nipple. So I wanted to include little bits of Ken. I mean, each zine is a little bit of a collage, this is an obituary about Ken Hill. This is from the Soho Daily News. I found this in the archives at La Mama, and I also learned, and this was fascinating to me, and very sad to hear too, that Ken had just he was, in addition to being involved in the theater, he was a photographer, and he had his first solo show that had just opened. Let's see, preview April 20th, and he died May 25th. So his first solo show had opened. So this is a card that I was able to photograph from the archives. This is the stamp from the back of his pictures, and I was able to see his work at the archives. They didn't allow me to photograph the work, so I wasn't able to share it in my zines. But it reminded me a lot of Alvin Baltrop's work. He did a lot of photography in the West Side piers. And so that's why I included this image, which is not Ken Hill's photography, but to sort of capture the spirit of that, I included that in the zine as well. I just have a couple more. Let's see, how am I doing time-wise? Okay, I'll try to wrap things up soon. This is the last bit of information I wanted to share with you about Ken Hill. Again, I was just very fortunate to have access to papers in the archives, including, this is the image you see here on the left is the guest book from his solo show. And these are just little observations and notes that people wrote to him, right after his show opened. There's this note here in French, which I thought was interesting because it talks about submitting his show to the International Photography exhibition in Bucharest, and I found that the show did happen in the fall of '77, but I wasn't able to locate a catalog or anything, so I'm not sure if Ken's work was included in the show or not. So we'll see. This is sort of a work in progress as well. Okay, a little bit more. Through some online chat rooms and websites, I posted a query about the guys who died in the Everard, and I got an answer from the niece of Ira Landau, and she shared a lot of personal memories about her uncle. Even though she was only a child when he died, she shared with me that he was, like her grandmother's favorite son. So she shared this picture here on the right, which I really love. It's a picture of Ira on top of his mother's TV right after he died, and this is like just a fancier picture of him at a wedding. She gave me the information about where he's buried out in Long Island, and she had never visited his grave, and I visited the grave and sent her lots of photographs, which was nice. She has his college ring, and she sent me a picture of this. She ran over to the bank. She says she had it in the safety deposit box, and this is literally an iPhone snapshot of his ring with his initials in the middle, and she sent that to me. So again, I wanted to include that in the scene as well. Ira was in the Peace Corps. That was one of the bits of information that she shared with me. So I took that little clue and I started doing research about people who had served in the Peace Corps in the Marshall Islands in the 60s. And yeah, somebody wrote back to me saying that they didn't know him well, but they recalled his friendliness and his warmth, that they would try to get me in touch with other people. So I decided to include even that personal note to me, although I never heard from anyone else from that. So didn't get that information. Actually, two of the victims were not born in the States. Josef Sinovec was born in Czechoslovakia. He was a Czech immigrant. He was musical prodigy. He moved to the States to study violin. This is an image of him, and you may recognize the woman in the background. Her name is Ima Sumac, and Joseph, in addition to playing the violin, was really became very famous, or relatively famous, in the New York cabaret scene towards the end of his life as an Ima Sumac impersonator. Like Ima Sumac, he also had a 5-octave voice, and so this is a picture of Joseph taken towards the end of his life. He died when he was 30, so this is him in his costume from his show, and it's not exactly, I wouldn't call it, it's not exactly Ima Sumac drag, but it's definitely a very stylized look that he had, and I've heard some recordings, some of the test recordings as well of Joseph's voice, and it sounds incredibly eerily a lot like Ima Sumac's voice. And my last zine that I'm going to tell you a little bit about, and then if I have 2 minutes, I'll read a little bit about this zine. This is one that I made on Patrick Knott. He was also not born in the US. He was born in Wales. And he was terribly difficult to find any information on because his name was misspelled in every newspaper article published at the time of the fire. His name is not spelled N-O-T-T. New York Times, New York Post, every place that listed the names of the victims spelled his name K-N-O-T-T. In the end, I got really lucky because I had his date of birth, date of death, and I found him on Ancestry.com. Or I didn't find him, I found his name on Ancestry, and there was a connection to a marriage certificate to a woman named Diana. And right away I thought, oh, well, it can't be the same Patrick because, obviously this Patrick died in a fire at the Everard. But then I thought, oh, well, it doesn't necessarily mean that he wasn't married. So long story, really, really short, I found information on his wife. I had her mailing address, so I sent her a letter. Didn't hear from her for quite a while. And then one day I included in the letter my email address. And then I found this lovely surprise in my email. She wrote back saying, yeah, Patrick was my husband. We were a little bit, we were estranged somewhat at the end of his life. I knew he was gay. We were best friends. And then she went on to share her very, very personal story. Patrick's very moving story, but also her personal story. And it was really a great experience for me because she told me that she didn't really like to chat on the phone very much. She lives in Florida. And so she said that she would rather write to me. And so she would send me an email every day for at least, almost at least 2 or 3 weeks. And I would get a new chapter every morning when I woke up. I'm not sure if I don't wake up very early, so she probably just sent it early in the morning, but by the time I would wake up, there would be a new chapter from her. And this is his passport photo. And these are not his glasses. She shared with me that his glasses had gone missing during the fire. So I did my best to find a similar pair of glasses and I photographed them at the Everard. I went to the location and took a picture of them there. He was a hairdresser. He worked for Vidal Sassoon in New York. And let me just take 2 more minutes, and then I'll that's it. I have to read something because this is a reading. She said that there was no obituary published either in New York or in Wales, so I decided that I would take her story and write an in memoriam for him, and that's included in the zine. So that's what I'm going to read to you really quickly. Patrick Knott died on May 25th, 1977 in the fire at the Everard Baths on 28 West 28th Street in New York City. Patrick was one of the 9 men who perished in this tragedy. He was survived by his wife, Diana Knott, née Pizzuli, of Brooklyn, New York, his mother, Enid Wall of Conway, Wales, as well as many cherished friends and colleagues in New York and in the UK. Patrick was an only child. He was born in Lowestoft, England, but he grew up in the resort town of Llywelyn, it's in Welsh, I can't pronounce it, sorry, in North Wales. His beloved grandmother, who ran a bed and breakfast in Llandudno, cared for him and raised Patrick while his mother pursued work opportunities in London. Patrick was a creative and inspired individual with a vision. He played the piano beautifully and occasionally dabbled in painting. Patrick Knott became a successful hairdresser in North Wales and worked there in his early adulthood. In 1965, Patrick began corresponding by mail with a young Italian-American woman named Diana from Brooklyn from 1965 to 1969. Patrick and Diana exchanged letters and through their epistles developed a deep and meaningful friendship. In 1969, they finally met in person and were married in Wales, where they lived for a year with Patrick's mother. They decided to move to the States in 1970 and celebrate their nuptials for a second time at the Church of St. Mary, Mother of Jesus in Brooklyn. Patrick's career took off in New York. He won several hairdressing contests and established a solid reputation and a devoted clientele at the Vidal Sassoon Salon on Madison Avenue in Manhattan. Patrick was a sensitive and innovative soul, and in his free time, his passions included theater, literature, classical music, opera, especially the voice of Maria Callas, and art museums. A private memorial service was held at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn in 1977, attended by family, friends, and co-workers. Patrick's final resting place is in Llandudno in North Wales. His memory lives on within all those who met him in life and all those who meet him for the first time through this work. That's it. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Martin. That was incredible.
Beautiful.
I don't know about everybody else, but being a librarian and huge nerd, I love hearing about the process of your research. It's so fascinating and how everything came together, and yeah, it's incredible.
I also love to hear, as Martin knows, much of this year's online zine fair planning meetings happened in Greenwood Cemetery. So
very true.
Coincidence?
Yeah, it's like the halfway point between me and Paul's home. So Greenwood is the New York Queer Zine Fair unofficial planning location. But yeah, thank you, our lovely zine readers today. It was really incredible. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. This was really lovely.
Yes, thank you, Paul and Kel, for organizing this. And thank you, JB, Tyler, and Martin for sharing your work with us. It was really beautiful. I love all the digging up of details from the past stories we don't normally hear. So thanks, everybody. I'm going to post this on our YouTube channel. And take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and keep breathing. Wasn't it JB who said that? Keep breathing.
Do we have a next event? What's our next event?
Right. I pulled that up and then forgot. Our next event is next Saturday in the evening with Patrick Earl Ryan in conversation with Jewel Gomez, which I'm excited about. Patrick Ryan, he has a book of short stories coming out called If We Were Electric. And Jewel Gomez wrote this legendary Black lesbian vampire book in the 90s, I think. It's on our online store, so you can check it out there. But I'm excited to hear from her as well. So, and then we have a couple more events before the holidays. And yeah, keep checking out our website and following us on the social medias. We love you.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.